I had taken the night shift at the Grand Harrow Hotel out of necessity, not curiosity. The job was simple. Sit behind the front desk, check in the occasional late guest, monitor security cameras, and do rounds of the empty hallways. The hotel itself was old, the kind of place that had once been luxurious but had long since faded into quiet decay. The carpet smelled of dust, the wallpaper peeled in the corners, and the dim lighting made the long corridors feel like they stretched on forever. It wasn't entirely abandoned, though. A few guests occupied the upper floors, business travelers mostly, or those stopping through town for a night. But what struck me as odd, even for my first shift, was how nobody ever used the stairwell. At first, I didn't think much of it. The elevator worked fine, albeit slow, and most people preferred convenience over climbing a dozen flights of stairs. But even the cleaning staff avoided it. The only time I ever saw the janitor, an old man named Earl, near the stairwell was to prop open the door while mopping the lobby. He never stepped inside. One night, during my first week, I asked him about it. "Nobody likes the stairs, huh?" I joked, nodding toward the heavy metal fire door at the end of the hall. Earl paused mid-sweep and looked up at me. His eyes were dull, tired. He'd probably been working here for decades. "You ever hear footsteps in there?" he asked. I frowned. "No." "Why?" He grunted, as if deciding whether or not to say more. Then, with a small shake of his head, he went back to sweeping. "If you hear them," he muttered, "don't look." I wanted to laugh, to press him for details, but something in his tone made me stop. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't some hazing ritual for the new guy. It was a warning. A few nights later, I was at the front desk, watching the security monitors. The screens were grainy, black and white feeds showing various angles of the hotel. The front entrance, the hallways, the back loading dock, and, of course, the stairwell. The stairwell camera was positioned at the top of the first landing, just before it turned downward out of sight. Most nights, it was completely still, just an empty, shadowed space, the emergency light casting long, dim reflections against the concrete steps. But that night, as I glanced at the screen, I saw something move. It was subtle, barely noticeable. A flicker of motion in the upper corner of the screen, like someone had just stepped out of view. I sat up straight, my pulse quickening. The hotel was quiet. Nobody should have been in there. I checked the guest logs. No one had requested a late check-in. The hallways were empty. The elevator hadn't been used in over an hour. I turned back to the screen. The stairwell was empty again. Probably nothing. A glitch in the camera. Or maybe my tired eyes playing tricks on me. Still, I couldn't shake the unease that settled in my stomach. An hour passed. Midnight crept toward 1 a.m. I was beginning to relax again when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from the stairwell. A rhythmic, steady sound, one step at a time, growing slightly louder as they descended. I turned toward the stairwell door. The sound was faint, muffled by the thick metal, but unmistakable. Someone was in there. My first thought was that it was a guest, maybe taking the stairs down to the lobby. But that didn't make sense. Nobody used the stairs. And if they had, I would have seen them on the security feed. I checked the monitor again. The camera showed nothing, just empty concrete steps. But the footsteps continued. Closer now. A chill crawled up my spine. I stood, hesitant, debating whether to check. My instinct screamed at me stay put, but my rational mind told me it had to be someone real. Maybe a guest had wandered in. Maybe someone was lost. Maybe there was a perfectly logical explanation. Before I could talk myself out of it, I grabbed my flashlight and made my way to the stairwell door. The metal felt cold under my fingers as I pushed it open. The sound stopped immediately. I hesitated, shining my light down the stairwell. Nothing. Just concrete steps spiraling downward, disappearing into the dim glow of the emergency light. The silence was deafening. I took a cautious step inside. The air was different here. Heavy. Thick. I listened. Waited. Nothing. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe the sound had come from somewhere else in the building. The pipes settling. Or the wind rattling against the old structure. I exhaled, shook my head, and turned back toward the door. That's when the footsteps started again. Not above me. Right behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Every muscle in my body locked in place. My breath caught in my throat. The steps were slow. Closer. And then, right at my ear, a whisper. "Don't look." I lunged forward, practically throwing myself back into the lobby, slamming the heavy door behind me. My heart pounded against my ribs. My hands trembled. I stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, listening. Silence. When I finally gathered enough courage, I checked the security feed again. The stairwell was empty. But just before I turned away, the screen flickered, and for the briefest second, there was a shadow on the landing, waiting. I didn't go near the stairwell for the rest of the night. I kept my eyes glued to the security monitors, but nothing moved after that flicker of a shadow. No more footsteps, no more whispers, just the still, empty stairwell. By the time my shift ended, I had almost convinced myself that I had imagined it, that the exhaustion of working nights was finally catching up to me. Almost, because when I walked past Earl on my way out, he didn't even look at me. He just muttered under his breath, like he already knew what had happened. "Told you not to look." The next few nights were quiet. I stuck to my routine, watching the monitors, checking in the occasional late guest, avoiding the stairwell entirely. I told myself I wouldn't let paranoia get the best of me. That had been a one-time thing. But as the week went on, something started to change. The hotel felt different. The air in the lobby was colder than usual, even though the heating was on full blast. The lights flickered more often. The radio behind the front desk would occasionally burst into static for no reason, even when it was turned off. And the guests, they started checking out early. One by one, people left before their reservations were up, some without even saying why. Just quiet, hurried departures. Some of them looked exhausted, others uneasy. And then, on my fifth night back after the stairwell incident, a guest approached the front desk, looking pale and shaken. He was in his early 40s, wearing a wrinkled business suit. His tie was loose, and dark circles hung under his eyes. "I need to check out." I blinked. "Everything okay, sir?" He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder before leaning in slightly. I don't want to sound crazy, but I keep hearing someone outside my door at night, pacing. A cold weight settled in my stomach. "Did you see anyone?" He shook his head. "No. Every time I check, the hallway is empty. But I know what I heard. It's like slow footsteps right outside my door. Like someone is just standing there waiting." I swallowed hard. "What room are you in?" His answer made my skin crawl. "Room 509. 5th floor. Right near the stairwell." That night, I made a decision. I needed to know what was happening in that stairwell. I waited until the hotel was completely quiet, 3 a.m., the deadest part of the night. Then, against every instinct screaming at me to let it go, I made my way down the hallway toward the stairwell door. I hesitated before opening it. Earl's voice echoed in my head. "If you hear them, don't look." But I needed answers. I pushed open the door. The stairwell was just as empty as before, silent, dimly lit, stretching downward into darkness. I stepped inside. The air was heavy again, pressing. I took a deep breath and started down the steps. 1 flight, 2, 3, nothing. Just the quiet sound of my own footsteps echoing in the empty space. But then, on the landing below me, a single deliberate step. I froze. I wasn't alone. The step was slow, measured, like someone was waiting to see if I would move. I gripped the railing, my breath coming in short, shallow bursts. Then another step, closer, and then the whisper, "You looked." The lights flickered, and the last thing I remember before everything went dark was the feeling of something cold brushing against my neck. I don't remember hitting the ground. One moment, I was standing in the stairwell, my breath frozen in my chest. The next, I was lying on my back, staring up at the flickering overhead light. The stairwell was silent, but that coldness lingered, something I couldn't explain, something unnatural. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding, and bolted up the stairs, nearly tripping over myself in the process. My hands fumbled for the stairwell door, and when I finally shoved it open, I felt like I was pulling myself out of a grave. I didn't stop running until I was back behind the front desk, gasping for breath, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the counter. The hotel was still. The lobby lights buzzed softly. Nothing had changed, but I had. I felt different, like something had followed me out of that stairwell. I didn't tell anyone what happened. What was I supposed to say? That I passed out because I got scared? That I heard something whisper in my ear? No, I kept my mouth shut, but the feeling didn't go away, and neither did the footsteps. They got worse. Guests started complaining more frequently. I heard them talking in hushed voices near the front desk. I swear, I heard someone in the hallway last night. The door handle jiggled, like someone was trying to get in. I kept seeing shadows under my door, but when I looked, no one was there. And always, these reports came from the 5th floor. One night, around 2 a.m., I was staring at the monitors when I noticed movement. The hallway feed from the 5th floor flickered slightly, and then I saw a shadow. It was tall, standing near the far end of the corridor, just barely visible in the dim lighting. I leaned in closer, squinting at the screen. Then, as if it knew I was watching, it moved. A slow, deliberate step toward one of the rooms. Room 509. The shadow stopped directly in front of the door, and then, in one unnatural motion, it twisted its head toward the camera. The screen glitched. I jumped back, heart hammering against my ribs. When I looked again, it was gone. I grabbed the radio, my fingers slick with sweat. "Are you there?" Static. Then, after a long pause, his voice, low, grim. "You saw him, didn't you?" I swallowed hard. "Who is he?" Another pause. Then, "Come outside." I found Earl standing near the back exit, a cigarette dangling from his lips. He exhaled slowly, watching me with tired eyes. You should quit, kid. I shook my head. Earl, what the hell is happening in this place? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took another drag, staring off into the dark parking lot. Finally, he exhaled. That room. 509, that's where it started. A chill ran through me. What do you mean? Earl hesitated. Then, in a quiet, measured tone, he told me the story. About the man in 509. About what he did. And about why he never left. Earl's voice was low, almost drowned out by the hum of the parking lot lights. This happened years ago, before your time. I stood there, hands stuffed into my pockets, trying to ignore the creeping cold in my spine. What happened in 509? Earl took another slow drag of his cigarette, his eyes locked on some distant point in the dark. Then, he exhaled through his nose. Guy checked in. Alone. Paid cash. Never gave a name. I waited. Housekeeping found him 3 days later, sitting in the chair by the window, still, staring at the door. A knot tightened in my stomach. Dead. Earl shook his head. Alive. Barely. But he wasn't right. What do you mean? He turned to look at me. I mean, Kitty wouldn't talk. Wouldn't blink. Wouldn't move. Just sat there, breathing real slow, like he was listening to something we couldn't hear. I shivered. Then he finally spoke. Just one thing. Over and over. Earl took another long drag, then exhaled through his teeth. He's in the stairwell. He's in the stairwell. He's in the stairwell. A chill wrapped around me. Jesus, what happened to him? Earl flicked his cigarette into the parking lot. They took him away. Never saw him again. I let that sink in. Earl turned back toward the door, gripping the handle. But I'll tell you this, kid. Ever since that night, people been hearing things, seeing things. Whatever that guy let in, it never left. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw real fear. And now it's noticed you. That night, I sat at the front desk, staring at the monitors. I couldn't stop thinking about Earl's story. The man in 509. What did he see? What did he let in? The lobby was dead silent. Even the air felt thick, like the weight of the past was pressing down on the walls. Then, the radio crackled. Front desk, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. No response. Just static. Then a whisper. He's in the stairwell. I shot up from my chair, my breath catching in my throat. The radio fell silent. I turned to the monitors, my stomach dropping. The stairwell camera was out. Static. Glitching. Then, for just a second, the screen flickered. A figure. Tall. Shadowed. Standing on the 5th floor landing. Not moving. Just waiting. The screen cut to black. And then, the stairwell door, just a few feet away, let out a long, slow creak. Something was coming. The stairwell door stood slightly ajar. A sliver of darkness seeped through the gap. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The security monitors were still glitching, their static blending with the pounding in my chest. My radio sat on the desk, silent, dead. And then, a sound. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate. Footsteps just beyond the door. I swallowed hard. I wanted to run. Every instinct in my body screamed for me to bolt out of the hotel and never look back. But something held me in place. A force. A presence. Like it was waiting for me to make a move. I reached for the landline on the desk, hands trembling. I didn't even know who I was planning to call. Earl, the police, anyone. But before I could dial, the stairwell door slammed shut. The sound echoed through the empty lobby like a gunshot. The monitors flickered back to life. The static cleared. The stairwell camera came back online. The landing was empty. No figure. No shadow. Nothing. I felt a bead of sweat roll down my back. My breathing was ragged, sharp. The silence in the lobby stretched, thick and heavy. Had I imagined it? Maybe. But then, something on the monitor made my blood run cold. The door to room 509 was wide open, and I knew for a fact I had locked it earlier. I took the elevator to the 5th floor, my heart hammering against my ribs. The hallway was empty, but the air was wrong. Thick, stifling, like something unseen was pressing down on my chest. I stepped toward 509. The door stood open, a dark void leading into the room. The lights were off. The air was icy. I hesitated, my fingers tightening around the flashlight in my hand. Then, against every ounce of common sense I had left, I stepped inside. The room was eerily silent. No hum from the air conditioning. No distant sounds from the city outside. Just stillness. My flashlight beam swept across the room. Bed untouched. Curtains drawn. Then, the chair by the window. A figure sat there, motionless. My breath hitched in my throat. My fingers tightened on the flashlight. It was a man, or at least, what used to be a man. His skin was gray, stretched too tight over his skull. His suit was old-fashioned, covered in dust. His hands rested limply on the armrests, and his eyes, wide open, staring directly at me. I took a step back. My flashlight flickered. The air shifted. Then, a whisper, so close, it brushed against my ear. He's in the stairwell. The door to the room slammed shut behind me. Darkness swallowed everything, and I felt it. Something in the room with me, moving, getting closer, and I wasn't alone anymore. If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to subscribe to Beyond Fear and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Here, you'll find more real stories filled with mystery, psychological horror, and the supernatural every week. Before you go, make sure to check out the 2 videos that just popped up in the end screen. I promise, they'll leave you with goosebumps. See you next time, if you dare.